flag
of the
the
United States of
America,
America,
to the republic for
republic
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we'll get started with councilman reports, I think. Well, we don't exactly have councilman reports on here, but it's close enough. Mayor and councilman report on current events. We'll start with Councilman Donahue.
Okay, I might just give a little school report. It looked like our Litchfield Elementary District was going to go back full-time, full-on, everybody next week. Not sure. They're supposed to have 3 weeks of green, yellow, red, and a couple yellows. So high school still hybrid, but 30% of our high school students chose not to come back in person. So that's just kind of what's happening right now. I think we all know that, so we're all watching this. And other than that, I've chatted with a handful of citizens, but nothing important. So that's all.
All right, Councilman Brandon Watson. Councilman Brandon Watson, did you hear? Yeah, you got to unmute yourself. There you go. Oh, there you go.
Having trouble getting my unmute to work. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Well, as you probably are aware, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, so I haven't really been around the community much for the last month. I've been here since October 8th, not August. So I really don't have too much to report at this moment.
All righty. Councilman Ron Claire.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman Rostosi.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Romack.
No, nothing to report.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I'll ditto that, nothing.
Oh my golly. I guess it's my turn. The only report I have is, this is something that's come up from some citizens asking questions of other council members. Once in a while, I see a question directly from the residents, and that is the trucks on Camelback Road. As you know, we designated Camelback Road as not open for through commercial trucks, along with a lot of other roads within the city of Litchfield Park. I understand from the city manager that the next step in the process is we have to get signs posted on the road. And since the areas where we need to post the signs are in county right-of-ways, we're waiting to get county approval for where we're going to place the signs. And we're also waiting for the final checkoff on the final box from the city attorney that the language of the signs is okay. Once we have the language okayed by the city attorney, then the city manager will get the signs on order. And what I have told him to do is that if the county is not getting back to us on this placement of the signs, we may just have to go out and place them ourselves and then beg for forgiveness once they're up. So that process is moving forward. Once we get the signs up, then we'll be working with MCSO for an enforcement process that will start with warnings. We'll also communicate with all of the users of large trucks that we can identify within a 5-mile radius. We'll communicate to them about this prohibition. So between that communication and the warnings, we hope we'll get the word out. And then at some point, we'll actually start writing tickets if we need to. So the process is going along. I'm not sure if we actually had a race between the pace of government and the pace of a glacier. If it wasn't for global warming, I think the government would win. So with that, that's my full report. Next, we're going to go to a report from PW
Mr. Mayor.
Litchfield.
Oh, I have a question about that. Can I ask it?
Yeah, sure. Can't be.
So here's my question. So if trucks are coming.
The nice thing about a Zoom meeting is if we don't like your question, if it violates the open meeting law, we mute you.
You can
So
mute
go
me.
ahead.
Hey. Anyway, it's not a debate. I'll be nice. Anyway,
All right.
so if trucks are coming from the 303, my thought is that
This isn't, Councilmember Donahue, this is not on the agenda for discussion.
Okay, all right, I'll ask somebody tomorrow or something, right?
Yeah, that's a better idea.
Okay,
Okay, anything else from anyone? If not, then we're going to go on to the report from the PW Heritage, Litchfield Heritage Center. And I can see we have at least one representative here, but we'll start with the vice mayor.
Okay, I see Nancy's online, so I'll let Nancy give the report.
All right, Nancy?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Nancy Schaefer, and I'm the president of the Litchfield Park Historical Society. Our last report to the council was in February, February 19th of this year, and of course, due to COVID, our museum has been closed since the first week of March. Today was our official reopening, and we're now open Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. with all the safety measures in place. And I spoke to City Manager Bill Stevens prior to our reopening to make sure we were going to be in compliance with everything. The PW Litchfield Heritage Center project continues to move forward in spite of everything. The Capital Campaign Committee reports we are now at, we were at 59% when we were here last in February, and we are now at 66% of the 3.5 million, which we now have 2,302,575 in donations and pledges. The good news is that a lot of the pledges have been coming in spite of COVID. We continue to receive checks from the pledges. And the committee just last week has resumed their meetings, and they're moving forward, and that's the Capital Campaign Committee, moving forward to reach their goal. They're just going to have to adjust how we're going to go about that. We now have 17 naming opportunities reserved for the project, and these are the larger ones. And we're in the process of preparing a second tier naming option for those interested in a smaller donation level of $10,000 to $25,000. We'll have that out shortly. Orchid Winslow and Waltz Construction will have the design drawings completed by the end of November. And they are requesting licensed, qualified, local contractors and material suppliers to contact them or check in with the Builders Exchange to apply and have their name added to the preferred bidders list for the project, meaning they have to go through, of course, a pre-qualification. But Orchid and Waltz both notified me, and I think I sent a note out to Vice Mayor Faith, and I believe I copied Councilwoman Brainerd and Donahue on that, but I'll resend it again. But they really want to get local contractors, local material suppliers to make this a true local project. It's really difficult with Zoom. If we were at our usual meeting place, I would be handing out at the end of the meeting contact information, but that isn't the case now. So all I can say is for, if you know of any contractors, material suppliers, to either have them call the museum, leave their information, I'll get back to them and get it to Orchid, or they can call Orchid directly, Orchid Winslow directly, and just say it's the museum project in Litchfield Park, and that will be enough to get them to the appropriate people to leave their information and get the process working to get them on the list. It's an excellent opportunity for them to be a part of this really exciting project, and we really, really welcome all to step up for this. And we will be giving recognition to those becoming a part of the project. So there's another reason too. It's going to be a high profile project and a chance to get their name out there. So we need your help. So once we've raised the funds to cover a minimum of 98% of the cost of the project, our construction drawings will then be approved with the final approval. Permits will be pulled, and the way it looks now, we'll be ready to go. So did anybody have any questions on the Heritage Project?
questions?
Any questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, I just wanted to give a quick update on our organization and how we're doing because of the closure. I'm sure people are wondering. So we have taken the time during our closure to be really as productive as we could be, working behind the scenes. We have rebuilt our website. We've added a new phone system. We've updated our bylaws with membership approval, and I'd like to thank Vice Mayor Paul Faith and his office for all of their legal assistance. Thank you so very much. It could not have gone through without your help, so we really appreciate it. We also we've just submitted to receive our 7th installment of the $1 million donation that came from the Blackfords, and it's going through the Arizona Community Foundation. We should be receiving that check too. And then we have one more check coming that will equal the $1 million, which we have already matched. And then we submitted and were awarded a $2,000 archival grant from the Arizona Historical Society. So we've already been putting that to use, purchasing archival materials to get a lot of our archival items that we have properly taken care of and preserved. And then our fall newsletter is completed and at the printers. We expect it to come out. We're going to wait until after the election to send it out because there's so much other stuff coming through the mail. But everybody in Litchfield Park will be getting that, and we really feel it's one of our best. So we're very excited about it, and we hope everybody will enjoy it. So any questions on anything? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
A piece of information for you, if you haven't already been informed or know about it, because of the problem with the break-in that we had here in the last week to 10 days, we are instituting significant additional security measures up on the Hill that will be in place until you take over and actually start construction. So we've got we're in the process of putting up a fence. We've got better cameras now and some lights that will give us the ability to see at night and see people if they come up there at night, and some other things that will secure the property better. So we're taking the steps we can to try to maintain security up on the hilltop until you guys get started constructing.
I want to thank you and everyone else that's been instrumental in helping out with this since we reported it. It was rather shocking to see, that people would just maliciously go up there and do damage for absolutely no reason, but that seems to be the sign of the time. So again, I want to thank everybody, Bill, Matthew, and all of you and of course, Mayor Schoaf for making this happen and securing the site. So we appreciate
one thing that we would ask you and everyone in the Historical Society is that if you see something in terms of vandalism or you come across damage like you did this time, if your first call would be to MCSO and the submission of a report, and then your second call to city staff. So we make sure that MCSO gets started on it right away.
Thank you. Because I wasn't quite sure. I know I'd called the city off or contacted the city offices, I think by email actually. So it's good to know the best order we should go into, get the information out there that there's been some problems. I'm up there almost every day walking around the house. And so I'll let everybody know. Yeah. Thank
Clearly,
you.
the very best first step is to call MCSO and get a report started, and then they can work from there in terms of the appropriate law enforcement steps, and then let the city know so we can, if we have to get up there and do some securing work or send up workers, then we can do that.
We'll certainly do that. I'll let everyone else know as well in the organization, to call MCSO and make sure they all have a phone number for that. So
okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. City Manager, did you have a report that you want to make during this section, or should we go on?
Can I follow council's lead and say I have nothing to report?
You can. It's up to you. It's not. You're not specifically listed under this item, although you normally are included in it. So it's fine with me if you follow that lead and you say I have nothing further to add.
Well, of course, you all get the Friday reports every Friday, but the one thing I did want to ask is that back when we went into the COVID-19 status, council directed staff to take all of the individual reports off of the council agenda. Then we were asked to add MCSO and the fire, and along with the council started reporting again. But we haven't been directed to add any other staff reports back. Would you want us to do that?
I think there should be provision on the agenda for a short report from you if you have something you want to tell us that's not in your Friday report, and there should always be a report from finance.
Yeah, we added finance, MCSO, and fire back, but we weren't directed to add anything else. But I can certainly put something on there.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go on. I've got a couple different agendas here. I've got one agenda on my computer and one agenda that I was sent. So I'm going to go with the agenda that I was sent, assuming that it's more up to date. It's our presentation section, and the first presentation is Employee of the Quarter. I think everyone who has come to council in the past knows how important I value the Employee of the Quarter award. It's an unusual award because it recognizes the employee of within our staff that is non-management, and they're recognized and picked by the other workers on our staff. So it is an honor for the person to be nominated, and then it's a further honor for them to be selected. So our Employee of the Quarter is Stephanie Irwin. She's an accounting specialist. I get to see her every week because she actually writes the checks that pays our bills. And I get to see her so when I come in to take a look at those checks. So Stephanie is not able to be here. We have a $50 gift card to Papa Paul's for her and a certificate, and we'll get that to her shortly. So for those of staff who are here, please let Stephanie know that we appreciate all of her extra efforts. Next item is 2 proclamations. They're in your packet. I'm not going to go through and read them over the Zoom meeting, but it's important to note that we're doing a proclamation to recognize the Arizona Cities and Towns Week. Arizona Cities and Towns and the organization that represents us through the league is a very big and important policy and procedure effort within the state to make sure that all of our residents of all the cities and towns are properly represented, and that they are that their lifestyle and the things that are important to them are promoted throughout the state, and particularly the state legislature throughout the year. So you should remember Arizona's Cities and Towns this week. And we also are recognizing the National School Lunch Program. We have a tremendous number of children in our communities that need assistance when it comes to lunch. It's important that they have lunch. It's really extends to breakfast now also. I know that there's several of you on the council that have joined in serving lunch throughout the years. It's unfortunate that our school is not in a situation where we can do that, because it is one of the highlights of the year to go down and spend some time with the elementary kids and see really the quality of the children that are attending our elementary school, and the amazing discipline and how well they behave with each other at lunch. I seem to have memories in my mind of lunch when I was in elementary school that was somewhat more rowdy than it is today. So there's a lot to be proud of within what's going on within the elementary school district. So we want to recognize the School Lunch Week. Now we're going to go on to public safety reports. We're fortunate to have Chief Luizzi with us. I can see him there. Chief, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Good to see everybody again, although virtually. So quickly, I'll go through the report for September. So we had 59 calls for service. 81% of those were EMS related calls. 12% of them, of the 81, 12% are at La Loma, and then 17% were at Las Cruces. So we do follow up with the Las Cruces and the La Loma staff to ensure that they are using the 911 system the most appropriate way. And our review of those calls, as well as staff's review, proved that they are using the system most appropriately. Otherwise, I didn't really see anything else that stood out to me. I'm available for any questions if there's any questions from the council members.
Questions from council? I don't see any hands up. So Chief, we have no questions. Thank you for your efforts and your service, and please thank all the guys down at the station for their efforts and their service to our residents. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Next item is a report from MCSO. It says we have Commander Bratton here, but I don't think that's it. I think we have, is it Lieutenant Jerez?
Yes, sir. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm Lieutenant Hedis. I'm stepping in for Captain Broughton. He's on vacation, so he asked me to step into tonight's meeting. I'm our night watch commander, so I'm assigned to District 2 and have pretty good knowledge of what goes on in Litchfield Park. Biggest thing he wanted me to point out was any significant changes in any of our stats or reports that we're putting in. One of the things he wanted me to highlight was our drop in traffic warnings and traffic citations. And he wanted to make sure we all knew that it wasn't because we were not trying. It's just we had a lot of details that came up, like the vice president visit, bike week came up during that time. So the squad that we typically have go in there and do those traffic stops for us was tasked with those other details. So that's where the drop came. With all that gone and done with, our support squad will be back on it to be able to go in there and take care of any of our speeders and traffic concerns that we may have in the park. So other than that, that's the biggest significant change, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the monthly report that we submitted in that the council members may have.
Any questions from council or comments?
For me,
Vice Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got an item, I think, on the agenda. I'm looking at maybe the second to the last version of the agenda for license plate recognition. Would it be possible to have the lieutenant maybe be involved in that conversation if we're going to hold it tonight? Maybe he has some input.
We can certainly ask him if he can stay, or we can also move it up in the agenda. With the original discussion that led to us looking at these license plate readers actually came from a discussion in a meeting with is it Captain or Commander Brayton? Lieutenant?
His rank is captain, but his title is the commander of our division, but it's Captain Broughton.
Okay, so it's Captain. So we had a meeting with the captain, and the use of those license plate readers actually was one of the discussion points we had on things that we could do to improve security within the city. So I think MCSO is in favor of their use, and they would be tied in directly to the data that comes out of them. So if Lieutenant has something he'd like to add about that, I'm happy to receive it. And if you'd like to stay for that discussion, I would be happy to move it up on the agenda so that would fit your schedule better.
I think you're better off talking with Captain Broughton. I know he's brought it up in our meetings about the discussion going on, but I think he would have more firsthand knowledge on where we're at exactly and be able to give you guys better answers than I would, than me just saying I'll refer that to Captain Broughton.
That's fine. So, and I don't think we're going to actually approve the use of the cameras tonight, but we're going to get a proposal that's slightly different than what's in your packet. And then it will come up either at a special meeting that I anticipate that we're going to schedule, or at our next monthly meeting for approving the consider approval of the cameras. So any other comments or questions for MCSO? All right, seeing none, we'll say thank you for your report, Lieutenant. Let Captain know that we look forward to seeing him next month. We appreciate the service that you provide to our community and all of your deputy sheriffs that work the community. So please let them know we appreciate their efforts.
I will pass your message along. Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on my agenda is the Finance Monthly Report. Ms. Peterson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Good to see you all this evening. Tonight I have for you our October 2020 financial report. So I'd like to share my screen with you. So this is attachment number 1 in your packet, and it's summarized in the council communication. So while I'm walking through it, I wanted to have the numbers up on the screen for you. So I'm going to start out at the bottom. And to summarize, we're through the first quarter of the fiscal year. So we're at 25% through the year. And to summarize, our net operating result in the general fund was just over $1 million, which is this number here. Revenue received in September totaled 2.8 million, which is 27% of the budget. So we're 2% higher than expected. And our operating expenditures in the general fund are just at 21%, even though we're at 25% through the year. However, I do want to point out the debt service payment hasn't been made yet, and that is a payment that we'll need to make that will bump this 21% up when I see you next month. Other general fund revenue, it is trending as we expected. Our state shared revenue is just over budget at 26%. Our local sales tax is doing very well. We're at 30%, but I'm going to go through the detail about that in just a minute. Most departments are under budget. We do have just a couple that are over city manager, but that's because we charge the PPE that we received through a grant here, but this money will be reimbursed. So that budget technically isn't over. And then council and commission is at 46%, but that's because there are some expenditures that happen early in the beginning of the year, like dues and memberships and subscriptions. So everybody is on track to come in at or under budget. Our construction sales tax, it was down. Well, it's at 29% of the estimate for the year, but it is a 53% decrease over last year. But last year we had an unusually high month because of construction that was performed at Camelback and Dysart. So we're right on track where we should be with construction revenue. So the general fund balance increased by 1.4 million since July 1, which brings our total fund balance to 13.9 million. But like I mentioned earlier, we still need to make the debt payment. And I also wanted to point out that just a reminder that we did receive the Arizona CARES Act revenue of $738,000, which is a one-time revenue that's included in this number. Our recreation services and special events, they're actually our recreation services revenue, it's only $6,200, but COVID has had a significant impact on their services and what they're able to offer. So their expenditures have totaled just over $133,000, significantly less than last year. Last year at this point in time, they were at $231,000. So for the first quarter of the fiscal year, they received or recovered 5% of their costs. Special events, we haven't had any special events yet, but their expenses are right on track at just over $30,000, so just a little over where they were last year. Special revenue funds, which is our largest, is our HERF, the Highway User Revenue Fund. To date, we received just over $110,000, so we're right on budget at 25%. So far, we've spent just under $119,000 on street maintenance and capital improvements. So at the end of September, the HERF fund has just over 1.3 million in accumulated fund balances. The street lighting districts, revenues are only 646, but that's because of the property tax collection cycles. Once Maricopa County, well, the bills were due October 1 and March 1. But we're right on track where we should be with them. And the Court Enhancement Fund, they have an ending balance of $192,000. So the total estimated citywide fund balance is 15.4 million. 1.4 million is restricted for HERF, the street lighting improvement districts and court enhancement, which leaves 13.9, this number here, in the general fund. So what I do like to point out is our ending balance, we have 19 and a half months worth of operating expenditures available on hand, which is a great financial position to be in. The Government Finance Officers Association of America, they recommend 3 months on hand. So we're well above that recommendation. We do have to look at our long-term forecasting when we're evaluating our fund balance, but over our 5-year period, our fund balance does support our future capital projects. And if there aren't any questions, I'll jump into our sales tax information. 1 second. My Zoom window is blocking my spreadsheet. So September was another good month. It's up 22% over last year. I'm really sorry. I meant to open up my PowerPoint, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump into here because I had more detail regarding sales tax in here. So our sales tax revenue budget, I wanted to point out where we were at this, how we started the year, where we ended last year, how the budget was put together this year for COVID uncertainties, and then to compare what we collected in fiscal year 20 from this at the same time period to this year. So last year's sales tax budget was just over 6.5 million, and our actual revenue collected was 6.8. So we collected nearly 321,000 over budget, or 4.9%. So we ended fiscal year 20 very strong. However, even though we ended the year strong, we did budget 53,000 less, and that was due to the COVID uncertainties. During that time, there was just so many unknowns. And so we budgeted 53,000 less, but the budgeted number is actually almost 374,000 less than what we actually collected in fiscal year 20. So we started this year very, very conservative. So our sales tax that we have collected this fiscal year from July to September, excluding construction, is just over 1.9 million. And last year at this point in time, we had collected 1.4. So just in these 3 months, our sales tax increased almost $469,000. So even though we're starting the year off strong, there's nothing to indicate the year won't continue strong. However, with COVID, I've built in a very conservative model, and I built in a 75% decrease in tourism-related revenues, which makes sense with COVID. Not a lot of people are able to travel. And then I assumed all other categories will remain flat. So this is a very, very conservative projection. And even with that conservative projection, our budget of revenues will still be higher than budget because we had such a strong first quarter. So this is the same information. I just wanted to put it in a graph form so you're able to visualize this. So over to the left, you can see our fiscal year 20 sales tax budget was here. We actually collected well above budget. And then here's the projection that I was just talking about that assumes that 75% decrease in tourism-related revenues, and then October to May, or the tourism from October to May, and then flat everywhere else. So you can see our projection, even with this super conservative estimate, we'll be on track to come in over budget. And then here's that year over year. Yes.
Are you trying to show?
I don't think what is on your screen that you're looking at is what's on our screen that we're looking at.
So if you go down further,
Dear.
you'll see your PowerPoint presentation embedded, and it'll show those graphic bar charts that you've created.
Let's try this again. Sorry about that. Are you able to see it now?
Well, now we can see the first page of your PowerPoint.
Okay.
So it looks like you need to go down to about page 3, page 4.
So if you click from the
There we
beginning,
go.
click to page 3.
I'm going to put it in slideshow and just because it makes it larger. Hopefully you're still able to see it. Are you still able to see it?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I could see it on mine. I'm not sure why it didn't project. So this chart over to the left is our fiscal year 20 sales tax, where you can see the dark blue was our budgeted sales tax. The light blue was what we actually collected. And then in the middle here is the sales tax projection I put together. Our fiscal year 21 budget is in the dark blue. And this conservative projection is the light blue, which shows even with this 75% decrease in tourism and flat everywhere in all the other categories, we're still projected to collect more than the budget. And I do anticipate our numbers will perform better than this projection, but since we're only through one quarter and there are still some uncertainties, it's interesting to project revenue right now because there's nothing for us to look back in history because this is the first pandemic that we've experienced in our lifetime. Then this third chart here is our year over year, year to date. Just wanted to visualize the same time period in fiscal year 20 is the dark blue, and this is what we've collected so far this year. So very strong first quarter. I broke out the sales tax. It's the same total, but I wanted to break it out by quarter. So you can visually see in quarter one, this is actual revenues. And then quarters 2, 3, and 4, you can see the projected is lower than last year's actual because I've built in that significant reduction in travel. But when you summarize it again, we're still on track to collect more than our budget. A very high level total annual revenue and expense projections. As we get further into the year and have more detail, I'll provide you with revenue and expense projections with more detail. However, total revenue projection is just over 10 million and our total operating expense projection is about 7.8 million, just a little higher than fiscal year 20. Here's I'm actually going to open it. Are you able to see this or is it too blurry?
I can see it.
Okay. So each category, the retail sales were up 18% this September over last September. I added in the online sales category rather than grouping it into retail, so you can see that breakdown. Oops, sorry. There's nothing to compare to yet because the online sales didn't start until November. So in a couple months, we'll be able to see that year over year comparison with online sales. Restaurant and bars up 3%, which is really good to see considering restaurants have had to do, there's a lot of restrictions there. Utilities are up, rentals are up. The other category, which there's too few taxpayers in this category to go into the detail, but there is a decrease there. Construction sales tax, like I mentioned earlier, is down from last year because of that significant project, but on track to where we should be. So our total sales tax, when you add in the construction sales tax, is down 2%, but that's directly related to that significant construction project last year. And this is just a graph that visualizes the city sales tax has been performing very well. Year over year, you can see the increases, and we're still continuing to see those increases this year.
Okay, we're at the questions phase, and let me just make a prefatory comment to the council. so that you can have an opportunity, if you have questions, to bring them up now while Paige is here to talk about it and we can discuss it. At the beginning of this year, this budget year, we made the decision to freeze all capital spending that was not from HERF funds. So we stopped the bidding even that happened for the wall project, even though we had informed the residents that the wall was going to be constructed in the next several months and that the bids were going out. We stopped that just in case that we didn't want to bid the project and then find out that our financial situation was not something that would support the expenditure. We also put in a freeze so that there was no cost of living or merit increases for our employees. Those were probably the two biggest things that we did. I asked Paige to make this a bit more detailed report this time because the information that I had seen was that our revenues were doing better, much better than what we thought they might do. And our expenditures were staying below budget, so that we have been generating significant excess cash. And the reason for that, I want council to understand it, because we have gone ahead and gone out for bid now on the wall. So the wall project is going to be coming back to council with a bid and a cost and hopefully for council approval. I think there's also on the agenda tonight a lifting of the freeze on COLA increases and the freeze on merit increases. So I wanted, before we get to that topic, I wanted to have an opportunity for council to question the financial performance of the city and question whether or not those decisions were sound financial decisions for the city as it starts to move forward. So Paige is here to answer any questions you might have. And with that, please let me know, is there anyone in the council who would like to ask any question to Paige before we move beyond this? Councilman Donahue.
Actually, I just have a question on the sales tax and that large number. Is that generally because of our grocery stores and restaurants, I'm guessing? Because the Wigwam certainly wasn't necessarily performing. So imagine that. I'm guessing. I don't know.
There are a lot of new businesses in the city, and the thing we forget about Dysart and Camelback, and that's just starting to come online. And we forget about El Mirage and Camelback. Those businesses are maturing and are starting to probably to do better. So we have some diversification in addition to adding in Fry's. And we've seen business at Albertsons hold up. So there's a number of different factors that go into the mix that help us on this retail sales tax. Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Able to unmute this time. What are you thinking, Paige, about the election, one way or the other? Are you concerned at all about fluctuations in spending or fluctuations in trends as a result of the election?
Thank you, Councilwoman Brainerd Watson. That's actually a great question, and it's honestly something I had not considered. I haven't seen anything come out from the league or GFOAZ to bring me caution for anything to look at there. But I will do a little research and reach out to some of my other finance colleagues and see if anybody else is concerned that the election could have an impact on sales tax.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. One comment and one request. I've been on the council for 16 years, and one of the things that we've done over the 16 years is an attempt to resist the conversion of residential zone property or commercial property into residential zone property. And that, I think we're seeing how that's coming to fruition right now with what's happening with our finances, which has given us the opportunity to do a lot of things to upgrade the city, our streets, our parks, the city center, the Historical Society, the Hill, all the things that we've always wanted to do. So I'm really happy to see this after all these years coming to fruition. The other thing is, Mayor, these topics tie together with the budget and a comment that was made earlier about the lack of staff reports, and we're not getting those. I'd like to get back to at least getting, we don't have to have written or oral reports, but written reports from each of the department heads, such as, like from Woody, so we can see, what's going on with the bidding process for the wall, so we can see what's going on with the city center, things like that. And we are getting some reports that are not coming in through the council packet. They're coming in through the normal channels, but they don't give us the opportunity to ask Woody questions and stuff. So I'd like to kind of go back to the system where we were getting the reports from the department heads, so that we would at least be able to ask some questions and discuss some of those issues if they.
Vice Mayor, that's not this agenda item.
It's on the finances. We're spending money on them, but yeah.
We can talk about the finances. Woody's report is not on this agenda item.
We will make a review of the things that we took off the agenda. Those things were removed because of COVID-19 and the change to Zoom meetings, and quite frankly, we didn't know how that was going to work. And it's gotten to the point now where everybody's pretty comfortable with it, and it is working. I think it's working pretty, really quite well. In terms of the council being able to meet, we're still not able to attract public comment maybe as much as we'd like, but the council meetings are working well. So that we'll take a look generally with the staff and see what things should be added back in.
And Susan's page showed us that we have 1.3 million in HERF funds. And I think Woody's doing something to try and spend those HERF funds. So that's why I'm tying this together, trying to figure out, I'd like to know what's going on to spend those HERF funds.
Well, I think
the biggest issue on HERF, which is something that's been reported, and I can see the city attorney scratching her head.
Oh no, it's just an itch.
Okay. Scratch your itch, please. The HERF money, the big item on HERF is the mill and overlay on Litchfield Road from Village Parkway roughly up to Camelback. And that's out for bid. That's in the process of being bid. So that will use up most of that HERF money, and then the rest of it is programmed for smaller projects. So we are in the process of spending that money.
And Woody's reports would give us how that money's, give the heads up as what's going on with trying to spend it.
It would give us more detail.
Yeah.
Mr. City Manager, you have a comment?
Sure. The bid will be open on November 5th. And we've provided a schedule of all of the projects with costs through a couple of different venues, a straight email from Woody and also in the Friday report, just in case. And I understand what the Vice Mayor is talking about. It would be nice to have them in this venue because then it would allow the public to also see that information and also allow council to ask questions in a public venue such as this.
And we're at the stage, I think, where we can add those reports back in and not have it be a problem in the conducting of the meeting. So, we can go over that offline and get the agenda massaged. Okay, any other comments? Councilman Donahue.
So I just have a question because Bill puts out a weekly report and it has all that stuff in there. Can you just add that to the agenda and then we can talk to people? I mean, there's a rec report, but he has a report. They all have information in there.
All right, we had a standard format for those kinds of reports, so we'll figure that out between now and next regular meeting. Any other comments or questions from the council? Okay, I don't see any. So Paige, thank you for your report. That takes us on my agenda to our consent agenda. We have consent agenda 6A through D. I want to find out if anyone on the council would like to take off any of these COVID-related consent items, such as the Christmas drive-in service, the Native American Arts Festival, or Christmas in the Park. We have staff who are here if you have questions about the decision to allow these to go forward. If you have questions about that, we have staff who should be able to answer those. So does anyone on the council wish to take any of those items off of the consent agenda so that they can be discussed. Okay, seeing none, then is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda items 6A through D?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Clare. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is adopted. We'll go on now to our business agenda. First item on the business agenda, number 7A, is the purchase of an automated license plate recognition system. I had thought we were not going to have action on this tonight, although it's been agendized so that we could if we desire to do that. There has been a change in the system that I think as it's being proposed, so we can see where we're at after we listen to the presentation. So Matthew, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to share a presentation with you tonight about the system, and then I'm going to refer over to Craig Gardner. Craig is with us. Craig works for Flock Safety, and he has a brief presentation also on the specs on the setup if you have any specific questions. 1 second. Okay, can everybody see the screen okay?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Again, Mayor and Council, this presentation tonight is on license plate recognition systems, also known as ALPRs. Again, ALPRs are automated license plate recognition systems. They scan and record license plates. They record times, location of vehicles. The picture on the left, as you will see, if you see the small black box below the light, that is one we put up earlier this week on Wigwam Boulevard. It's no longer there. We put it up there so we could show one tonight as far as how it works actually during this meeting. As you see, it's very small. It's about the size of a sanitizer box you would see in a restroom somewhere. It's very small. This one, however, does not have the solar panel, though. This one was battery powered. When Craig does his presentation, he can show you what it would look like with a solar panel. You can power them either way. They track vehicles on hot lists, such as Amber Alerts, Silver Alerts. You know what Amber Alert is? If there's a child that's kidnapped, an Amber Alert goes out. Those Amber Alerts can be plugged into this system so that if a car with that tag number passes by one of these cameras, it notifies police officers that that car is in the area. Same thing goes with Silver Alerts. I'm sure you're familiar with Silver Alerts. If an elderly person is lost, Silver Alerts come up. Same things work for stolen cars, active warrants, that sort of thing. They also generate reports to show where vehicles are regularly located. They show if cars are by that camera every day, that person probably either works or lives in the city. However, if the car comes by there once a month, they probably don't. A big thing on these are not used for traffic enforcement. And what I mean by that, you may remember a few years ago, there used to be cameras in Scottsdale on Shea Boulevard. There were also some in Star Valley, and there was some fuss over those. Those were speed cameras. Again, these are not traffic enforcement cameras. These are tags. These don't issue speeding tickets or anything of the nature. They also do not have facial recognition software. They don't capture faces. They capture tags. They capture cars, not people. Some cities do share data. That is something we could look at. That's something we want to do. The info that these systems record is confidential. Just regular city employees can't look at these. That information is available to police, to law enforcement. Obviously, if we got the system, we would make that information accessible to MCSO. The mayor said earlier, we had talked about the system briefly with MCSO, I want to say back in August. And I've actually spoke with several officers there with this, as I've seen them in City Hall. And everyone I've talked with is very excited about the possibility of having one of these systems in Litchfield Park. And they all talk about how much it would help them in the job that they do. I happen to know that MCSO is currently in discussions with buying some of these systems themselves to put in areas just north of the city. And also Tempe is currently rolling one out as we speak with the same company. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free. Again, this company is Flock Safety. One camera covers 2 lanes of traffic. So a road like Dicer that's 3 lanes would require more than 1 camera. Again, they're powered by solar power or hardwire. We would recommend solar power. Solar power is recommended and included in the $250 installation cost. That includes the solar panel, the pole, putting it in the ground, etc. Cameras are capable of capturing up to 30,000 plates per day. The cameras identify the make, model, color of the car, tag, and state of tag. Those are big things for this company. Many companies that offer these systems do not have that technology. Many companies can tell you it's a red Honda Accord, but they can't tell you the tag number. Others can tell you the tag number, but they can't tell you what state. Obviously, the more information you can get, the more you can nail down where this car came from, the driver, etc. The cameras cost $2,500 per camera per year. That is a lease. And the company's willing to do from 1 year up to a 5-year lease, again, depending on contract terms, however council is comfortable with. That also includes cloud storage. Flock Safety recommends what they call virtual gateways. What that means is 2 cameras to capture vehicles entering and exiting the city. So as you're coming in, for example, on Camelback, there'd be a camera on both sides of the street. So either way, you capture the cars. The entry cameras capture the tags, and that's important. Exiting cameras capture what time and what direction the car was headed. That's very handy for police investigations. So we can also say, this is the time the car came in, here's the time it left, so we can establish a time frame. Information is normally stored for 2 weeks or up to 30 days at the customer request. The city could choose to have that information stored for more than 2 weeks if we wanted to do that. The camera warranty does cover the full term of the camera lease. If we purchase these, or excuse me, if we lease these for 5 years, they would be warranted for 5 years. Again, it is a lease. At the end of the contract term, the cameras do go back to the company. Flock Safety can be considered a sole source company, again, because of the technical abilities that I mentioned above. However, if council wanted to go out for RFP, we could certainly do that. You may have seen in your council communication, we did this multiple ways. Option A provides cameras for incoming traffic at all neighborhood entrances within city limits. So that means any road that accesses a neighborhood would have an incoming camera. Of course, people come in on the main roads like Camelback, Dysart, but these cameras, again, to go in any neighborhood, they would be caught on camera. This quote is for 16 cameras at a one-time cost of $44,000. So that includes the cameras for 1 year and the $4,000 installation cost. Again, installs $250 per camera, or $2,500, $250 per install, or $2,500 per camera per year. This is the map where those locations would be. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Can you guys see that map?
No.
No? Okay. One second, guys. Terry doesn't want to let me go back to share screen. It still shows that I'm screen sharing. Can you see the map now?
No, we just see everybody.
There we go. Here it is. Now you can see the map, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this map shows 16 cameras. Again, this is for 1 camera per neighborhood.
Yeah, let me, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what where these cameras are.
Of course.
So these we're at the very bottom, you have one that's shown on Indian School, but that is actually it's on the entrance into the park that's on Old Litchfield Road. Is that correct? It's not capturing all the traffic on Indian School.
That's correct, sir. That's the entrance into the neighborhood, not Indian School.
Okay, I just want to make sure the council knew, but that was the change that was made in this proposal. Originally, staff had looked at putting the cameras on the major streets like Indian School, Litchfield Road, Camelback Road, Dysart. And most of those cars, I don't know, 80% or 90% of those cars never come into the park. And so having all that data would be of not of very much use to us. So the idea was to take the cameras and put them on all of the entrances that actually came into the different areas of the city. Now, the one that's shown, for example, at Litchfield Greens that may or may not be a camera that we need, because the Greens may have their own camera system. And they have a guard gate that sits right where that camera is. So that would be something we would talk to the HOA about to see if that really is a value added expense. But the rest of these cameras are aimed at actual entrances into our neighborhoods. So with
That's
that,
correct.
just to make sure everybody understood that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Matthew.
Councilman Clark, go ahead.
So
Yes,
are
sir.
we talk, so we're talking just entrances. We're not talking exits.
For option A, sir, option A is just for entrances. Option B will show you entrances and exits.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any more questions on the map locations before I go back to the presentation?
I don't see any other, but I can't see all the council members. So if anybody has a question, speak up. It looks like not, so go ahead and continue, Matthew.
Okay, thank you, sir. Option B, as Councilman Clare was just asking, option B is 32 cameras. Of course,
No,
option A.
this is not showing up on your screen. There we go. Start over.
Now, do you all see it, sir?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Again, option A was 16 cameras. Option B is 32 cameras. Again, this is entrance and exits for all neighborhoods. It provides cameras for incoming and outgoing traffic at all neighborhood entrances. This quote is for 32 cameras at a one-time cost of $88,000 and an annual cost of $80,000. The plus for this, as I've said, is for investigation purposes, you can show when a car entered and left the city and also what direction they were heading. So of course, if someone commits a crime, they're probably leaving the city in a hurry. So that could help to say which way they were headed, et cetera. And again, a timestamp to be able to say what time they left the city. That's the main difference. Again, it's just if you want to do cameras both ways. The biggest value is for the cameras that are the tag readers, not the exit cameras. However, Flock Safety does recommend having cameras both ways. And again, that's called a virtual gateway.
A question for either for you, Matthew, or for the individual from Flock. The exit camera is got a wide enough range and width, that it will show if the car turns left or right as it leaves the park.
Craig, can you answer that question, sir?
Yeah, the way that we would set up an exit camera would be to catch people as they leave the area. So somebody comes in the area, they case for a while, they might be in the area for a certain period of time. The longer they're in that area, the more hits you'll have across your network. So being able to just have that camera with that description on their way out is going to help you. So it wouldn't necessarily know somebody's going left or right. It would scan the tag as they leave so that when somebody says, hey, I had a very specific vehicle, a red truck with stickers on the back that came in and was stealing packages, we can figure out who that red truck was, trace it to a tag, and MCSO can grab that person based off that lead.
Right. Matthew had talked about knowing whether it went, which direction it went when it left the park. And we really aren't going to have that if we don't go in and put cameras on all of the major arterials also. But this system would at least allow us, in the cases where we know what the car generally looks like, it would let us figure out what the plate number is and who the people are that own the car.
And when they left the neighborhood.
And when they left, correct.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Councilman Clare.
So in the initial part of the presentation, you said the camera is designed to carry 2 lanes. Most of these entrances and exits are just 2 lanes themselves. Can the cameras be situated in a way, and do they have a strong enough lens to be able to not only catch the car that's in the close lane, to be able to, at an angle, see the car coming to leave on the opposite side so that we don't need the exit?
Craig?
I'll probably get into that in a little bit more. I'll show you guys how it works. I have about 5 to 10 minutes worth of showing you how the system works in detail that I can show you. But the specific answer is if that happens, it's coincidental. We use AI technology to do what's called vehicle fingerprinting. So we literally are using AI to fingerprint a vehicle, get the plate, get all the information about that vehicle that's come by. And in doing that, we have focused on the rear of the vehicle. We don't focus on the front of the vehicle. We don't focus on faces. It's fingerprinting the rear of the vehicle so that we can give law enforcement a viable lead. It does happen sometimes where we get oncoming traffic, and coincidentally, our system sometimes will pick up the types of vehicles it is. Arizona doesn't require a front plate, so that's some evidence, but it's not the intended purpose.
Hey,
Thank
Matthew,
you.
you want to go ahead and go on?
Yes, sir. Additional options. Again, it should be noted that option A and option B are just for entrances into neighborhoods. Is there a question? Okay.
I don't see one. Go ahead.
Okay. The city could choose to cover additionally every primary street. What I mean by primary streets are Camelback, Litchfield, Wigwam, Indian School, and Dysart. You can do the main roads, but again, that would take a lot more cameras. And as the mayor said, you would also capture cars that weren't necessarily coming to the city, and depends on locations. But again, that would be more expensive. To cover every street into the city, both primary and neighborhoods, would cost $60,000 annually for single direction, or $120,000 annually for incoming and outgoing traffic. So again, it's more expensive. However, again, even with option A, which is just the cameras entering the neighborhoods, all vehicles entering the city neighborhoods would be single neighborhood camera systems. So if you're trying to cover residential crime, people in the neighborhoods, option A would cover that. However, by doing all the streets, obviously you'll capture more cars. There's definitely pros to it, but of course it costs more money. Again, while all options are expensive, these cameras would serve as a force multiplier. In comparison, you may remember, we've talked about doing a full beat with MCSO. At 3/4 beat, our current costs are $920,000 a year. To move to a full beat with MCSO would cost us $1.28 million. That was the quote we got back in the spring, an increase of $300,000. So just a comparison as far as cameras versus a full beat. Some comparisons in other cities. Avondale has one system, but theirs is attached to actually a police car, to their volunteer police vehicle. So it just drives around the neighborhood. That is good in some ways, and then it's mobile, but if a crime's happening at the other end of the city and the police car's on the other, you don't capture it. So that's a huge downside to that. I did speak with the chief in Avondale that he's worked with communities that have HOAs with these systems. And if the HOAs get on camera, they turn over that footage to the police department. Paradise Valley has a large system. Paradise Valley reads 70,000 tags a day. However, their system costs $750,000. They have 13 stationary cameras and 4 cameras per patrol car. Several crimes have been solved with their ALPR system in Paradise Valley. They use cloud system like we would. They're currently going with they're changing from their previous system to a Motorola contract. And their new contract is going to cost them roughly $300,000 a year. So, and again, they have some HOAs that provide info to law enforcement. A few other things, as I said, I reached out to the chiefs of Avondale, Tolleson, Paradise Valley, and Peoria. Only Tolleson and Paradise Valley responded. There may be some pushback on these. Some people do see these as an invasion of privacy because you're tracking tags. However, again, there's no facial recognition technology. You're not capturing people. That's not what you're doing. They're not speed cameras. They're not about traffic enforcement. They're about tags. And it's very important to understand that. And again, they would send notifications for Amber Alerts, Silver Alerts, etc. The city of Tempe, again, is currently doing a trial with Flock Safety. And as I've said, MCSO is in discussions. So that's all the information. I'm sorry, sir.
Well, it said questions on my screen, so I just blurted out. I apologize.
No problem, sir.
What kind of a trial is Flock doing with Tempe? How does the trial work, and what are the costs of the trial?
I'm going to refer that one to Craig, and he has some information for you guys also, sir.
Yeah, I can answer that, and then if you don't mind, I can share my screen, Matthew, and I can just run through a very high level where we're from and maybe show you guys what the cameras do. Would that be beneficial?
Yes. Okay.
So with Tempe, we're doing a trial that's built into an agreement. We call it a Project Prove It. Essentially, it's a period of time where if we aren't solving crime with our cameras, we'll go take them out. We put our money where our mouth is. We'd be willing to do the same thing for Litchfield Park if the city's open to it. Whenever we put in our cameras, we have found that we immediately begin solving crime at a really impressive rate. And we have many references for that. Actually, part of what I'll tell you here is kind of how we came about. Just to go quickly through a couple of these. In Georgia is where we got started. Our founder had a break-in next door. And long story short, they couldn't solve the crime because they didn't have a license plate. And in law enforcement, that happens all the time. So he developed an LPR that was much less expensive than any of our competitors and actually does a better job based on an LA County Sheriff's Department study that did a side-by-side. It showed that we were about 30% more accurate than the more expensive readers. Since we came out with that system and began selling to public entities and police departments about a year and a half ago, we've brought on over 400 police departments. We have over 750 cities with our cameras. So we've grown at an extremely quick rate. And that's because our system is really pretty unique. We have, I think Matthew mentioned this a little bit, but we have a very unique technology. We have some patents involved in our technology involving vehicle fingerprinting combined with plate reading. And so we believe in a wide scale deployed solution, which is essentially infrastructure free. So using solar panel and cell power to push camera data to the cloud, and then also have that data analyzed by an AI system that creates that vehicle fingerprint. So our cameras see like a detective. I'll show you what that means. And we also have public and private partnerships. So we have private entities that will get cameras, and we also share those with the police department. This is what the camera looks like up close. It's a little smaller than the football. I love that Matthew showed you guys that picture there. Here's what it looks like in the wild. So on the far right, you have a camera with a solar panel on top on a flock mounted pole in soft ground with our camera there. On the far left, you have it up on a light pole, kind of like what you saw in the initial photo. And in the center, you see it wired into existing electric on a utility pole. So the mass majority of our cameras go up in either the far left or the far right fashion, where there's a solar panel powered cellular unit. This is the type of information that the police department gets. It's useful for what they call NCIC hot tag alerts. There's a database from the FBI that has all of your stolen vehicles, known sex offenders, amber alerts, silver alerts, all sorts of different alerts on there. And this is the type of information they can get as well. So I'll show you exactly what the system does here. I have a tab open. So the police department has a system that alerts them, sends them text messages when anyone comes in to contact with these cameras. So stolen vehicles are a big deal. Memorial Village, Texas is very similar to Litchfield Park in a lot of ways. They actually claim to be one of the safest cities in the metropolitan area there. And Memorial Village has had several experiences where suddenly they found 4 to 8 hot tag arrests a week, meaning stolen vehicles coming through. One of the stolen vehicles that's a case study, they actually had one male or 2 males and a female in ski masks and machetes going into an area where they probably weren't from in a stolen vehicle. They pulled them over and were able to prevent some crime from happening. So the hot tag and the hot list tool is something we only can give police departments because we have to have that partnership through the FBI and what they call CJIS compliance, which our company is. So we can share that with MCSO and they can immediately start getting hot tags through the system. The other side to this is the investigative tool. And so I did set up a camera. So I have a lot of cameras I can access. I'm going to use my demo camera that we set up on Monday. We set it up at about 1:30 or just before that, but we'll say that we're looking for a vehicle. So I submitted this search. A couple key things here. You have to have a search reason. So you can't go searching the cameras. There aren't surveillance cameras. They're looking for active hits for some sort of pertinent law enforcement reason. The other thing is that the data is only kept for 30 days on a rolling basis, and it's only the rear of the vehicle. So the intent here is to catch people who've committed crimes or catch people who are wanted for committing crimes in your city. It's not to monitor anything other than that. So we have 94 different objects and a lot of different scans came through. Keep in mind, this is just one camera over a relatively short period of time, a little less than an hour. So what this allows law enforcement to do is when you have a Ring camera, other cameras like an HOA might have, they get a grainy photo of a vehicle committing package theft, break-in, some sort of heinous crime, murder, whatever sort of crime's happening, we can use that vehicle description to kind of walk back the different features of the vehicle. So using our vehicle fingerprint technology to find out, okay, are white cars within the area at that time? So this shows up all of our white vehicles, trailers, trucks, you name it. Now I can take out all the trailer trucks, just put it in a white car. And as a detective, I can go in and say, okay, we're looking for a white car with a Blue Lives Matter sticker on the back. Arizona place, we think it might be a Toyota. So I'm going to boil it down to a Toyota, submit that search. And now as an investigating officer, I have this same car that came up twice, the Blue Lives Matter sticker on the back with, a good read of the plate. So now I can take that information, I can see who that is registered to, see who owns the car, and now I have a viable suspect in whatever sort of crime I was investigating. So we see, going back to a couple of the slides here, we see a lot of success in other cities like Cobb County. They have Beat 215, which is, they have much smaller counties than we have here in Arizona. So Precinct 2, Beat 215, they put cameras in this fashion in a relatively small test area. In doing this, and kind of the way you guys are doing it, where you create these virtual gates and essentially it's checkpoints where people are funneled through, they were able to reduce the crime, the break-in, entering, the crime, nonviolent crime in Beat 215 by over 60%. And then the entire precinct saw a reduction in crime because we were getting the bad guys off the streets. So like was mentioned a couple of times, we're very straightforward with our pricing. It's $2,500 a year per camera. That includes everything. It's $250 to put the camera in the ground. And they do a great job covering multiple lanes. Here is that map again of what we're covering in terms of all the ingress on the neighborhoods. There could be a strategy where we cover some exits on major roads. We still get someone left in a hurry and we were looking for a tag at that time. We could have the best of both worlds by adding some hybrid number of cameras. So definitely a few options out there. Any questions for me about that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Romack.
Thank you. Craig, good presentation. I think it's really an advantageous project or system for us, but I have a couple of questions for you. One is all those white cars are in the middle of the afternoon. Bad guys work at night too. And what do they show up? How do they look at night in your system? And then the other question I would have is, what about if we did the first 16 cameras and then we decided a year from now that we wanted, thank you, if we wanted to change and do the other 16 for the 32, can we add to the system like in the middle of our contract, or is it either all or nothing?
Yes, sir. So to answer your first question, we do very well at night as well. We have a mixture of not only our AI technology based on a photo, which is different than any other company out there. We also do IR technology at night, so infrared, shining infrared light, enhancing the vehicle features. And we measure things like tail lights and positioning of lights on the rear vehicles to determine things like make, model, type of vehicle. So that's to answer that question. Here's a quick screenshot of nighttime. I could find you a night shot, but I did the demo during the day. I'd have to come back and show you a different night shot.
That's all right. That's fine.
Your second question, can we add cameras in the middle of an agreement? You can add cameras at any time. I've been told by our CEO as well as multiple other leaders in our organization, we do not plan on raising prices for the foreseeable future. That's kind of where we stand. We want to make sure this is very affordable. We truly believe in eliminating crime. And we go as far as giving access to some of our system to all law enforcement through an MOU for free. Like that's just what we do as a company. That said, if we're 23 months into a 24-month agreement, we'd probably add more cameras on a separate agreement. But we have no problem adding additional cameras. In fact, our average retention rate is actually over 200%. So our customers, not only do they stay with us, odds are they double their cameras. I just got off the phone with La Paz County earlier today, and La Paz County is a customer of ours. They're more than doubling the amount of cameras as a sheriff's office that they own, and they've had the cameras for less than 2 months.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Got it. I got a few questions. Does the exit cameras ever show faces? They show in the front of the vehicles or only the back of the vehicles?
We primarily focus on the back of the vehicles. Sometimes, depending on the camera angle and the way we install it, the cameras can go off and we'll detect motion. We'll get people walking, we'll have oncoming traffic, and every once in a while, we'll even get a plate that comes at us with a front-facing plate going the wrong way. That is not within what we consider an acceptable parameter for our data. And so we don't sell it that way. It happens sometimes, but when it happens by accident. We don't intend to catch the front of vehicles on their way out of the neighborhood. It has been used as evidence. We've had one caught on the other side of the road from a different camera in Georgia that helped aid in a stranger on stranger child abduction, where they actually were able to recover the child because of our evidence in that fashion. So it does exist, but it's not the way we intend it. It's not the way we sell it because it's not consistent enough for us.
I got a lot of questions, so give me short answers. Okay, people walking in, is it these are motion censored, I presume, so are they catching people walking in and out?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the failure rate or the inability to pull information off of these cameras?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, everything breaks, everything fails.
Sure. If I'm understanding the question correctly, we strive for 100% captures. We think anything above 98% is acceptable. If someone's not within the parameter, like if someone's driving halfway down the side of the road, like maybe the camera catches multiple views, there could be some failure rate there, but it's very, very minimal.
And you're catching a lot of data. Who's reviewing this and how has this been set up? Where's the time coming from to review all this?
How is the data being reviewed?
Yeah.
So it would be by law enforcement or an admin of the system with a specific reason. You'd have to log into the system, have credentials, and if you're talking about physical storage, it's stored in Amazon MilCloud. It's a criminal justice compliant cloud storage solution on a rolling 30-day basis.
And if we have a theft of some sort and some detective gets it because there's been a few of them, and this information is only kept for 30 days, these are not priority items, these thefts. They may take longer than 30 days to even get to it. You erase everything at the end of 30 days?
We normally erase everything at the end of 30 days. Anything caught within that can be downloaded, and that's the mass majority of crime. When there's evidence, we can find it and download that information. We actually integrate with Axon, who MCSO uses as for evidence.com. It's part of their system. But beyond that, we have talked about opening up that parameter depending on the needs, but the only way we'll ever adjust that parameter is based on the voting of a governing body like the city council. We don't ever extend that other than when a policy is voted on by a governing body because of an ethical boundary there.
And my last question, I count 11 entrances into the city, plus the greens, plus the gated community behind Fry's. You're showing 16 cameras and you're showing 3 of them up around Fry's. What's up at Fry's where we got 3 city entrances?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I can answer that one, sir. The ones across from Fry's that you're seeing along Camelback, those are as La Loma develops. Not the home itself, but as the Sun Health project develops, there's several there for those entrances. Just like there's one on Denny Boulevard. That's what those are, sir. The ones that it would be there across from Jack in the Box in that area. So honestly, we could wait on those if we want to. Those could be installed later as the development comes. However, I wanted to show you those in the price. I always want to give you guys the Worst case scenario, just so you're aware.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Councilman Clare, did you have your hand up?
I did, sir. Thank you. Craig, good presentation. What is the lifespan of these cameras?
We anticipate that they last about 2.5 years, but the nature of the agreement, we take care of the cameras should they fail, break, hail damage, anything that happens to them. Think of this more like like LPR as a service, where we want to deliver that software and the cameras are a means to do that, of which we maintain.
So it's basically almost like a full service warranty. So if something goes wrong 2 years from now, we're in the term of our contract. There's not a shipping cost. There's not a reinstallation cost. It's a broken piece that you own.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Donahue.
You're muted.
Mute is on. Council, there you go.
Okay, am I on? Anyway, the information is stored for 2 weeks. So do you need to
30
solve
days.
the crime?
30 days.
30 days, so you need to solve the crime within 30 days, or can you download the suspicious information, or it's in the cloud or whatever?
Best practice is to download the information. We go through training with the sheriff's office. So for instance, let's say you get a call and you get a description of a vehicle right then on initial investigation. You can find vehicles that match that. Let's say there's 3. Maybe you download all 3 of those vehicles to a case file because they fit the description of the vehicle of the crime at that time. And so that can be used for prosecution and has all the metadata included.
So we can download the data and then we have it.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Any other questions? Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Can we also say we don't know a vehicle, but we know a crime was committed between 8 and 10 o'clock on a certain night? Can we download all of the vehicles exiting and hold on to them for a period of time until we figure out which one it was?
Yeah, we don't put any restrictions on downloading individual images. Depending on how much vehicle traffic you came through there, you just need to, you'd be downloading. It might take a little bit, but you could within that certain period of time.
And then do you monitor the cameras to know on a daily basis which ones are recording, and which ones are, maybe malfunctioning or died?
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Our success is hinged on your success at stopping crime. And so we want to make sure those cameras are up and running because that's how we prove our value.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilman Donahue.
Just one quick question. So I'm guessing those cameras are high enough that they can't be vandalized? I
12 feet.
Okay, so they take a broom or anyway. Got it.
And we catch them on camera.
CSI.
Any other questions or comments?
Only thing I would say, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mayor Council, for your attention tonight. As you saw, my recommendation would be for option A, would be for the 16 cameras to capture tags entering the neighborhoods. Again, if that's what you want to do, of course, if you'd like to go out for more information on RFP, we can certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking the effort to put in the proposal. It's something that I personally am very interested in seeing us pursue. The question is whether we want to have this, everybody take a little bit of time to think about it, and then we'll put it on an agenda for action, another discussion and potential action. We're going to be talking about a special meeting, and that may be held in the next week to 10 days. We could do it then, or we could do it at the next regular council meeting. So what is everybody's pleasure? Councilman, City Clerk, Terry Roth, yes.
Are you deferring this to another agenda?
I don't know that the council is ready to ready to take action on it yet. I think this is the first time it's been presented to the entire council. And so I suspect that this is something that we should allow everyone to think about it a little bit, and then take action on it at our next opportunity. I think it's important enough that we do it. If we have a special meeting, I'd put it on that agenda only because I think it's important for us to make this decision, because we have had some crime lately that we have not been able to solve, that I think these cameras would have helped us in. So,
I just need a motion if they do defer it.
yeah, Miss City Attorney.
A question for Matthew. Do we have a form of contract on this?
No, ma'am, we do not have a contract in place yet. No, I want to see what council want to do first.
I'm just asking
Form.
the contract to be reviewed. Do you have that?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am, I do not have that in my position as of yet.
So, Mr. Gardner, I assume when it goes on the agenda for approval, that we'll have that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it'll need to be a form because I think the council probably will need to discuss how many cameras we want to see put in. And then I think part of the proposal, I'd like to know what you will do with the this test concept. So if we want to put in X number of cameras in our test, what are the terms of that test? How does that work?
The way that term normally works is we put it in as part of an agreement. And essentially it works much like an out clause where we have a 30-day window. Within that 30 days, we aren't meeting our expectations or something's gone wrong, we'll pull them out and there's no cost or commitment on your end at all. And we do that because we're very, very confident that we'll immediately start to solve crimes using the cameras when crime comes up. And that happened. We've never had to pull them out ever, knock on wood.
So it would be a good idea, I think, to get to Matthew contracts for both option A and option B with that provision in those contracts. And then we can, once we have that and we can get our city attorney have time to take a look at it, then we'll get it on a council agenda to discuss it. All right.
Thank you, sir.
So now we need a motion, Ms. City Clerk. Yes?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Vice Mayor, are you asking to make a motion?
No, I'm asking a question real quick. Before it comes back to us, Matthew, if you'd find out from the Greens and from the gated community behind Fry's where they already have cameras, does it make sense that we buy a camera to sit next to their camera?
If I
Yes,
may,
I'll certainly look into that.
Matthew, can we get a copy of that map of where you're planning on putting the 16 cameras?
Yes, sir, you certainly can. I'll have that link sent out to you guys.
Great, thank you.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, so is there a motion to defer this until a council meeting in the future after we have gotten specific contractual proposals from Flock? And at that time, we'll discuss it again and make a decision. Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion.
So moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilman Clare. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so we'll take a look at your contracts and put it back on a council agenda as soon as the two things come together for the next time we can consider it. Thank you for the presentation.
One more question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And could you check and see if there's anything on the Mojave contract that's similar to this?
Yes, sir, certainly can.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next item is a public hearing on a liquor license application and use permit for Vero Power Brewing LLC. If you listen carefully, I have opened the public hearing. Is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, just give me 1 second here. Scrolling the packet. I'm so sorry. Let me do it this way. I've not received any comments for or against. They have applied for a use permit for a new location. The property was posted October 1st, and according to state law, that's required to be posted for 20 days. They have paid for their business license and their application fee. I have nothing further.
Okay. I think the applicant is here, I'm assuming. That is.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. That's me.
Shaking their hair. Paul Power?
Yes, sir.
And you're going into the same location where we had a similar use previous to this?
Not quite, sir. We actually have a location that's up and running right now. It's in a building right next to Fringe. We share a wall with the Fringe Hair Salon. We're going to be moving to the next building to the east, which was used for CrossFit prior to us. So it's in between, it's right there on Honeysuckle Road, just west of Papa Paul's, just the Fringe building.
All right, so same business is moving.
Mayor, if I may, I apologize to step in. Were you looking for staff's report on the use permit yet, or are we just talking about the liquor license? I didn't want you to.
Right now we're doing a public hearing on the liquor license.
Perfect. All right, just making sure. Thanks.
Okay. So let me see if there are no public comments. Are there any questions from council of the applicant? Okay, I don't see any questions. At this point, I don't know that we need anything further from you, Mr. Power, but if we do, we'll come back to you. So I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask Miss City Clerk, this agenda I have is confusing. It looks like we're going to do the use permit first and then the liquor license recommendation, correct?
That is correct.
That's different from what we had on our original agenda. So we're going to go to item C, which is considering a use permit for the Beardo Power Brewing LLC at 103rd/105 West Honeysuckle. So we have a presentation from Mr. Sanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. City Manager.
I probably missed it, but did you close the public hearing?
I did.
Okay, thank
I
you.
even wrapped it like that.
I didn't hear, sorry.
My knuckles are sore. Mr. Sanks, do you have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council, and members of the public and the applicant. We have a request for, it's called TCBC, Transplant City Beer Company, used to be known as the Litchfield Tap Room. So in your report, you'll actually see three entities. Try not to be confused by Beardo Power Brewing LLC. They're doing business as Transplant City. So basically, the Litchfield Tap Room has new owners. It's known as TCBC Brewery now, and they're currently next door at 107 West Honeysuckle. They've had a series of use permit approvals in the past. I believe back on October 16th, 2013, they got a use permit approval and then a reapproval again for the use permit on March 16th of 2016. I recall that application, we presented that to the council. And really the request is for a use permit to allow a bar in the neighborhood commercial zoning district. This has been, an interesting use. Microbreweries have popped up in popularity over the last 20 years. A lot of zoning ordinances hadn't contemplated microbreweries. So at the time, it was interpreted as a bar because they were indeed serving the product that they were brewing. And so we considered it a bar. And back in 2016, the use permit was approved with a 5-year time stipulation. And the purpose of the time stipulation was to give the council an opportunity to reevaluate whether or not there were any concerns about negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood related to the business. I spoke with Pam, and prior to P&Z, as well as since then, we've not received any complaints over the current operations at 107 West Honeysuckle. Now, they're wanting to move into the old CrossFit facility, which is next door, just a bit closer to Old Litchfield Road. And I'll share my screen if you'd like to see a parcel map and what the building looks like. I'm sure you'll recognize it. But they'd like to move in next door there. And as well, they got a design review board approval to allow a roll-up door on the east wall that faces into the side, the back of the restaurant that's just along Old Litchfield Road. So they'd like to have a breakout area that's going to be on a patio. So the door would roll up. They could have their customers, their patrons, if you will, and then they could enjoy being indoor and outdoor at that location. So that said, the Planning and Zoning Commission met on this just on October 13th. Everybody was generally supportive of it, wanted to support the brewery and its move next door into maybe a better space. The thing that came up towards the end of that meeting or that hearing was, should there be considerations now in regards to hours of operation? And as the brewery owner elaborated, they have relatively limited hours of operation compared to, let's say, a nightclub or an actual bar that may be open till 1 or 2 a.m. So the P&Z and the applicant worked out hours of operation with limitations as part of the use permit recommendation of approval to this council. So the recommendation would be to add a stipulation of hours being limited until 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, Saturday until 11 p.m., and then Sunday until 8 p.m. Prior to that, staff had not recommended limitations on hours of operation, as there had been no concerns with noise expressed through any noise complaints, et cetera, to staff in the last several years. So with that, the P&Z and staff recommendation is for approval with the P&Z stip of those hours of operation. Further, it was discussed in the last council approval for use permit for the brewery that at this time, at this go around now here, we have it in 2020, that we likely would not add a quote expiration date on the use permit, that it would be allowed to operate indefinitely without an expiration. Council full well knowing that if something were to dramatically change, they could call the use permit up for hearing and perhaps revoke it if there were to be complaints in the future. I might have Susan comment on that if she doesn't mind. If a use permit that doesn't have an expiration were to start to generate significant complaints or disruption to the neighborhood, could council call upon that use permit to a public hearing and perhaps hold the use permit or revoke it? So
I think you could only revoke the use permit if they were in violation of the conditions of the use permit.
I see. So in other words, if if they were exceeding the hours of operation of the use permit, they could
Yes.
have the, okay, I understand. All right. So then I defer, I guess, to the council. We don't have a recommendation for a time expiration on their use permit. If the council has a concern about that, we could certainly add a condition to keep perhaps a 5-year expiration like we did last time.
All right, any questions or comments from council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have any time stipulations on the business right next door?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, I believe that business is considered a restaurant and therefore would not have, it doesn't require a use permit, so there wouldn't be any time limitations on that business.
We do have a 10 o'clock noise ordinance, correct?
I would honestly, I would have to defer to city code on that. I'm not familiar with the city code limitation on the 10 o'clock noise ordinance.
I'm pretty sure we've got a 10 o'clock noise.
We do for certainly for certain things. I don't know how it applies to those businesses on Old Litchfield Road, since there obviously many of them are open way past 10 o'clock. Mr. City Manager.
What I would ask then, and I believe that's correct, but what I would ask is at the current location, do they have outside seating, number one? And number two, at the current location, do we have restrictive hours?
I'm not sure why Jason put that in. We need to get that question answered first. I think everybody knows where the CrossFit is.
They do have outside seating at this time.
That's what I thought. Hours?
I'm sorry, I think the audio cut out. Was there a question directed to staff, or I couldn't quite catch that?
There was a question directed before you put this drawing up on you shared your screen. I'm not sure why you did that. I can't see everybody anymore because I've got this screen up there. That's better. There was a question, and I don't remember who it was from. but it was a question about the hours of operations and whether they had any outdoor patrons.
Mr. Mayor,
Just so let's get that question answered. We'll come back to you, Councilman Roback.
it's the same question.
We have the applicant here. Yeah, we have the applicant here to answer that.
Yeah, our hours are fairly limited in that we, as a brewery, we don't, I know that the classification is bar, but we don't treat ourselves as Mr. Sink said, we don't treat ourselves like a nightclub. So we shut down at a fairly reasonable time every night as it is. Currently with COVID, of course, our hours have been a little lighter, but we don't foresee beyond, something like New Year's, we don't foresee any reason we would be open later than 10 o'clock at night, something like that. So I don't believe that we have a restriction on our use permit right now that relates to hours, but we keep our hours pretty reasonable.
And we do not have restrictions as far as I know on the restaurants that are very similar to bars already. I don't think we let them stay open as late as the state law allows. So I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to put restrictions on this business unless there's a good reason for it. Councilor Romack, did you have a question?
How does he feel about these hours that planning and zoning have discussed?
So of course we would like the freedom to be able to stay later on certain occasions. One of the occasions that my partner and I discussed after the planning and zoning committee meeting was, for instance, 4th of July. If 4th of July were to happen to fall on a Sunday, the fireworks, we have an amazing view of the fireworks where we sit. So we like people to be able to sit outside and watch the fireworks. There's things like that. But again, the reality is we like modest hours. We're never going to be a 2 a.m. kind of place. We foresee ourselves shutting down by 10 o'clock. I mean, every night beyond extreme special occasions like, say, a New Year's or a 4th of July, beyond that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? All right, then we need a motion to approve this use permit application. I personally do not favor the restriction on hours because I don't think this business has given us any reason to restrict their hours. They've been a good neighbor and they have a business that if they want to stay open responsibly as long as a bar stays open, then I don't see why we would stop that. So I would like to have a motion from council to deal with this use permit, and you're welcome to make the motion in either with or without those restrictions from planning and zoning. Councilor Watson.
Mayor, I just have a question. I was confused about the agenda too. Did your public hearing include both the use permit and the liquor license?
Well, it must have.
Okay.
I hope that's what it reflects. That was my intention. How's that?
Yes, the public hearing did include both the use permit and the liquor license.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
So now Councilman Watson was going to make a motion, I think.
I was, sir, and I would make the motion that you just.
To approve the use permit without the restriction on hours.
Absolutely.
Is that within the, Jason, is that within the within the recommendation from P&Z, is there anything else other than the restriction on hours that we need to take into account with this motion?
Mayor, if you will, the other item was if you were okay with not requiring another 5 years for them to come back to council with your action tonight. We currently have it written that they do not have to come back.
And I would support not requiring them to come back. And they're a business and they're trying to build up goodwill, and they don't need to have the potential for us to shut their business down for no reason in 5 years. So I personally like the motion the way it is. Is there a second for this motion? Councilman Clare. Is there any further discussion from any council member who either supports the motion the way it is or who would like to see it changed for restricted hours or a restricted time limit? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Okay, the motion for the use permit passes without restrictions on length of time or hours. Now the issue before us is to decide whether we recommend to the Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses that they be granted a liquor license for this location. Is there any question or discussions from council concerning this recommendation?
Motion to recommend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Clare. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll recommend to the liquor license that since we're going to let you operate your brewery, that they give you a license for it. I guess that would be helpful. Okay, next item on our agenda is a business assistance program. Ms. Paige Peterson, are you still here? I see your name. There you are. Welcome back. We can't hear you though, so you're muted somewhere.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Mayor and Council. Back in August, you had approved the COVID-19 Business Assistance Program that we opened up and sent to all the local businesses. The applications were due September 18th, and we received 3 applications and then 1 late inquiry about the program. 2 of the 3 that we received, they didn't submit the financial reports that we had required, and 1 had already received federal financial assistance. So the 3 that applied, all were disqualified. And the gentleman that called me, he was late. He called me the Monday after the deadline, and after visiting with him for a little bit, he had already received federal financial assistance as well. So even if he had made the deadline, he wouldn't have qualified. Then we also received information that nonprofits in the community are also struggling financially, and they could possibly benefit from the program as well. So after speaking with some of these businesses and not receiving any applications or applicants that would qualify, I'm recommending a few revisions for your consideration. And one of those is to remove the disqualifier for businesses who've already received government assistance. What they explained to us is that the Paycheck Protection Program funds, they just expressed that it wasn't enough funding, and it had also been several months since they received the funding, because that was back in March. Then possibly consider changing the financial report requirement that we had originally put in. We required a balance sheet and income statement. And if we could allow alternates to that, such as bank statements. After speaking with some of these business owners, they are sole proprietors. They don't have professional financial statements done. But if we did allow that, I think we should require them to sign an affidavit that they are providing all of their financial information. Then also to allow consider to allow nonprofits to apply. Their application would be a little bit different, and that we would require them to provide a narrative how their revenues and donations have been impacted and how they directly help the community through their nonprofit. The other recommendation that I can see is just like the gentleman that called me the Monday after the deadline, is instead of having just one hard deadline, that maybe we have 3 phases, because this would allow the word to get out more, give businesses more than one opportunity to apply. So we could have a phase 1 deadline of November 20th, phase 2, December 18th, and then a 3rd in January 22nd. And then also consider looking at changing the requirement. Revenues must have dropped 25% in March and April to 25% during any 2 months from March to September, or through the end of our phased in period, if we choose that 3-phase approach. And I just realized on the nonprofit revision, add a bullet there that they're not required to have a business license in the community because most nonprofits do not have one.
A question for you, Paige.
Yeah.
Instead of the balance sheet, and instead of going from a balance sheet to just bank statements, which is it's a pretty big leap, I'm wondering if we couldn't require them to give us their Schedule C out of their tax return, which would give us the information that we could derive from their financial statements. We couldn't figure out their balance sheet from the Schedule C, but if we had Schedule C plus a bank statement, then we'd get a pretty good idea of what, of their financial situation.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Mayor.
That is an excellent idea.
Mr. Mayor, they won't have a
Sorry.
Schedule C for 2020.
No, they'll have one for 2019 though, so we at least see that they've got an operating business, and they can show us what's changed. Yeah, I think I'm concerned that a bank statement by itself is not sufficient, because I don't know what it's going to tell us.
Mayor, if I could, one applicant, she did provide her bank statements, and from this time period, this year to last year, to show how her deposits had changed. So that was how she was trying to basically build her financial situation for us. But I do understand how it will be difficult to see an entire picture just from bank statements.
Yeah, I think if we had a Schedule C from 2019 and we had bank statements for all of 2020, then we could compare what's on that on their normal operations from 19 with what the bank statements will tell us about their income and expense for this year, and we can make a pretty good judgment of that they meet the criteria for the assistance. So I think the two together would be good, but it may be if the council wants to only have the bank statements, that's fine too. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. How are we going to determine who meets the qualifications to get funds and what amounts they get?
As I understood the way the program worked, they had to meet these general criteria that we put out there. So they had to have a business license, they had to have revenues fall by 25%, and they had to be in a situation where they needed assistance. And then they would make application for a specific amount that would go through our staff, and then staff would bring us a recommendation based upon what information they had, that they were able to gather. So the process is more than just these pieces, I think. If that's not correct, Paige, let me, please speak up.
So that's correct, Mayor. We put together those guidelines in an application, and then after we collected that, we would bring that to council. We did put a maximum amount of $10,000 per applicant. It would be similar to the process that you go through every year for the nonprofit allocations.
Right, so we'd have to make a decision on what we wanted to award any individual applicant based upon what information they provided us. It's not a real formalized system, Vice Mayor, but we're a small city and we only have a small amount of money really to deal with here. So we're just trying to figure out a way to help these small businesses and or to help some of the nonprofits that need our help possibly too.
I would imagine you're probably going to get every nonprofit that comes in every year asking for funds. So I would expect to see 10 to 20 nonprofits and maybe a couple of businesses.
Yeah, so it would be a situation where we could give them some assistance if they could justify it. I mean, we have these funds to help in this. It would be a good use of the funds.
And the bank statements are very helpful because we've seen in the past when there's applications from nonprofits, some of these nonprofits are asking for very small sums of money, and they're vying with nonprofits that have no money, and some of these guys have millions in the bank.
Right.
I mean,
So we don't want to give them money.
Yeah.
Bank statements would be good for that. I mean, we need financial statements would be best, but bank statements help.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Paige, could you take your share screen off so I can see everybody again? Then I'll know who's trying to ask
Yeah.
questions and who has their hand up. All right. Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. City Manager,
Not yet, and I don't want that job. Thank you.
you're right above the Vice Mayor.
So originally council had a discussion and said we had 360, let's break it in half and give out half, 180. If we gave 10,000 per business and we were talking about 18 businesses, of course, you know, now we didn't have anybody qualify, so we're trying to change the parameters. When we talk about the nonprofits, one of the parameters besides the impact to the community, we meant specifically Litchfield Park. That would be a consideration for council. Are we talking about a nonprofit that's outside our city limits that someone can go to do something? Or are we talking about a nonprofit that actually assembles, organizes, or some way does an action or activity within the city limits? That would be one thing to consider.
Yeah, my preference would be to look at nonprofits that actually have activities going on within the city.
All right, yes, sir. Thank you.
So, and I personally like the idea of taking half of the funds and giving those out to these smaller businesses, and then taking the other half and keeping it to see if we end up in a problem, you know, in the next 3 or 4 months where we need to spend that money on PPE or something else that we need for city operations. Any more questions or comments?
I do have one comment. So when you add nonprofits in, remember the rationale for being able to do this was economic development, preserving local businesses. The rationale when you give money to nonprofits is that they're providing a service to the city, a public service to the city.
Fortunately, because of the way this program was structured, we don't have that limitation. Our CARES Act money that we got from the state was used for our public safety expenses in the city.
Oh, this is the extra, well, you
Right,
still
so
have
this
gifts,
is-
but you
Well,
still have.
this is our CARES Act money, but it doesn't have the restrictions that you're thinking of.
No, I'm not thinking about I'm thinking about the gift clause.
Hey, let me finish. The normal restrictions that we deal with every year when we give money to the nonprofits. So those normal restrictions we'll still have to deal with. I think everybody understands that. It's just that we wanted to open it up to take a look at them, because I know that there are several of them that are having very serious financial situations. Their business models have changed dramatically. And if there's something we can do to help, I think it fits within what we do in our normal process of the charitable gifts that we put out into that community every year anyway.
I was not objecting to anything. I was pointing out that there are different criteria and different considerations in order to A, satisfy the gift clause, and B, what you do for the nonprofits, providing a service to the city. I satisfy the gift clause with respect to the nonprofits and the economic development rationale for the private businesses.
A good example is we very well may have a significant number of people in our community that need food assistance. And we have different nonprofits that are there and able to provide that food, but a lot of them don't have the money to necessarily do it. And so I would hope that we would hear from some of them so that we could actually do something for the nonprofit that would directly benefit our residents. So is there any other comments from anybody on the council? If not, is there a motion to adopt the recommended changes as presented by staff, including using bank account information and coupled potentially with Schedule C information if the business has it?
So moved.
Who was that?
Donahue.
Okay, I see it over there. You're so quiet that time. So it's moved by Councilman Donahue. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Brainerd Watson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion count is, it passes, and we'll go forth and see if we can take and get any applicants that are worthy for that 50% that we've set aside. Okay? All right, next item is employee compensation. Also Paige.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. During the fiscal year 21 budget process, there was approved in the budget a 2% merit pay and a 2% cost of living adjustment for employees. The total cost of that is $131,400. But at that time, due to all of the uncertainties regarding COVID-19 and what that might do to our revenues, Council had asked to put that in contingency and to hold off on it until we saw how revenues performed and to bring it back to you in the fall. So we're through the first quarter, and I presented the revenue update earlier. I do believe that our revenues can sustain these compensation adjustments, and I would feel, excuse me, these would be backdated to July 1, 2020, if Council does decide to move the funds from contingency to department budgets.
Any discussions or questions from Council? Councilman Brainerd Watson.
Paige, does this include all staff members?
Ma'am, yes, it does.
I just want to make sure like city manager and assistant city manager are included in this.
Actually, I probably better defer that to the city manager.
That is correct. The COLA applies across the board to every employee. Merit pay raises does not apply across the board to all employees. It depends on whether they deserve a merit pay raise or not. And then it can be a varying percentage. So there may indeed be money left over from that merit 2% that isn't actually used or spent. Therefore, it would go back into the general fund.
Which then brings us to the topic of who awards the city manager's merit increase or not, and that is the council. So
Right.
that will be coming to council in the future. Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve removing the restriction on these employee compensation funds?
So moved, Tom.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the funds are unrestricted. Next item is an employee position roster. Council, Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. Mayor and Council, I'm going to share a screen for just a second, if you guys don't mind. Figured it'd just be easier this way. Most of these are more title changes than anything. So I'll just go through them department by department. Can you all see the roster list now on your screen?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. The first change you'll see there is city management intern. This is something we would like to add. However, this one will only be added if we can get grants to do it. There are grant funds to do internships in cities. I myself had an internship when I was first getting started. They're very valuable. They're hard to come by. I think it'd be good to have somebody on staff too, but again, this would only be if we can get grant funding to cover it. Scrolling down to HR/IT administrative assistant. This job was already funded. This is just a title change under HR. Again, this is already funded under this year's budget. Sorry. Under public works, you will see that last year the project manager position was added. That position has now been eliminated. However, one change there is the maintenance tech. We were authorized for 13 positions, but we actually already had 14 on staff. So that's the change from 13 to 14, as you see, for maintenance tech. And again, that project manager position has been eliminated. Scrolling down to the rec, If you read the council communication, you'll see, of course, there were a lot of changes that we made in the rec department. And this is something we were discussing for some time. Is just from my standpoint, the position of assistant city manager / community rec services director. It's an odd job. It's very unusual to have that combination, and it creates issues too with not having someone at the rec, vice versa, et cetera, multiple issues. So this is how we would make those changes. We are defunding the recreation office manager position. Some of you may remember, of course, that Chris Weaver had been our longtime rec office manager. She passed away a few months ago. We will be defunding that position and dividing Chris's job duties among several people on staff. And by making these changes, one, it makes changes to the staff, and we will actually see an $80,000 annual savings in the rec department by making these changes. Again, so with these changes, you'll see community rec services director. I would no longer be over the rec department, but Tricia would be. She would be, I'm sorry, I should just say talent not person. I apologize. She would be over the department and still be over city events. That would not change. Also, we're dividing the cashiers up into cashiers 1, 2, and 3, just like the lifeguards are. Before they were just cashier 1. And the reason for that is because different employees have different skill sets. It just makes sense to divide them up. But again, no more positions were authorized. As you'll see, currently they're at 2.25. We just divided them by 3. Aquatics coordinator, that was just a title change. Sports coordinator was just a title change. Media assistant is something we added earlier this year. This person has been working with the mayor a lot on the virtual flag raising. I'm sure the mayor's familiar with that. He's doing a great job with social media, et cetera. Currently, we're funding that with savings during COVID. However, staff feels that they can fund that within the department next year under the current budget if needed. But again, he's doing a great job. Another change would be preschool director. Before, preschool director was part of the office manager position, and we would be promoting our current preschool teacher to preschool director. We would also be making all our recreation supervisors salaried as part of this change. So that's the main changes. I realized I covered a lot of ground there. If you have any questions, I would certainly try to answer them. And thank you again, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to make these changes.
So if you could, let's take the screen sharing down, unless we need to go back to this chart. And now, are there questions from council? I don't see any. So is there a motion to approve these changes to the roster, the employee position roster as presented by staff?
So moved, Tom.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the roster is approved.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next item is to make a change in the council representation to the Design Review Board and to the Southwest Valley Chamber of Commerce. Our current council representative to Design Review Board is Councilman Romack, and our current Southwest Valley Chamber representative is Vice Mayor Faith. It's been recommended that we change both of those. Both of those individuals would like to have a break from those offices. And we have a volunteer in the form of Councilman Clare, who is willing to serve both on Design Review Board as our Design Review Board representative and at the Southwest Valley Chamber, of which he's already an active member. So unless there's someone else who would like one of these positions, I would love to see a motion from the council to appoint Councilman Clare as the Design Review Board council representative and as the Southwest Valley Chamber council representative.
So moved.
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor, it looks like. Any further discussion? Thanks for volunteering. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Thanks,
opposed?
Ron.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councilman Clare. Those are important positions. And it's good for us to have, to give a break to some of our long-term council members who've been doing those important tasks for a long time. All right, next item is Bird Lane traffic calming modifications. I think that's got to be Woody Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is change order number 1 to Ace Asphalt's contract to install 6 speed humps on Bird Lane. If you recall, when you first approved these speed humps back in December of 2019, the project was stalled. And found, learned that the speed humps did not meet the MAG specifications. So I was working with the original contractor who became unresponsive, found Ace Asphalt. They gave us a proposal, and we installed them. And all of that process, I failed to verify with the Goodyear Fire Department that these speed humps had been previously approved. As soon as they were installed, Goodyear Fire Department contacted me and said that they don't like speed humps. So I worked with them to come up with some revisions that would make it acceptable to them. And basically it's cutting 2 wheel tracks in each speed hump at 6.5 feet apart, which is their standard wheel spacing, their wheel track spacing. And the speed humps will still work with normal cars, which have a wheel track of about 5 feet, 4.5 to 5 feet. We also decided to go ahead and cut a wheel track near the gutter on both sides of the speed hump in order to allow bicycles to pass without having to go over the speed hump, because we did get a couple of complaints about that. So the Goodyear, we had Ace Asphalt go out there and change make these modifications to one of the speed humps. Goodyear went out and tested it with their vehicles and they approved it. So I went ahead and got a change order amount from Ace Asphalt in the amount of $16,717.18 to modify all 6 speed humps.
I have a quick question.
Councilman Donahue.
Can her funds be used for that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I
It's
have
a
a
HERF
question.
project.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilman Clare.
So this is, Ace is in the business of laying asphalt, and I'm sure they've laid asphalt in other communities in Goodyear. Do they not have some responsibility of this for having laid these, knowing that emergency vehicles need to go to utilize this space?
I don't think so. I think the fault was all with city personnel.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually had a city personnel who represented to many of us, some of us, that Goodyear had signed off on these speed humps. So it's at this point, it's not a city employee who currently works with us. So he doesn't work for us anymore. So it just had, it's like an expense that we're going to have to bear. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we were told that the design of these speed humps were such that these trucks could go across them without any problems.
Correct.
But almost $17,000 to just do this on half a dozen speed humps? Are we tearing them totally out and putting in all new asphalt, putting in all new speed humps? Or are we just fixing the ones that are there?
No, it's modifying the ones that are in place. It's very, very labor intensive work because they have to grind out a portion of the asphalt, but then that leaves vertical walls on either side of the slot that they cut in. So then they have to grind those walls back at a 45-degree angle and then infill with some additional asphalt to cover the cut asphalt areas. So that's the reason it's so expensive, is because it's very labor intensive.
Yeah, I drive over those quite a lot. I drive over the one that's been fixed. And quite frankly, I had thought that when they tried to fix it, it wouldn't work because you'd end up with raveling and the thing would just break apart and you'd destroy the speed hump by trying to fix it like that. And it actually came out very well. I mean, the speed hump that's been modified, it's a good job, and it does look like quite a bit of work, quite frankly, to me.
Is that the easternmost speed hump?
No, it's the eastern. It's the second speed hump in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. I drove over to the day.
One plus that comes out of this is that there will be additional markings because we now have a third chevron marking on the speed hump. And that was one of the complaints we got when we first installed them, was that they were difficult to see. So that'll help with that.
So they're gonna put chevrons pointing to where the gap is in the speed hump?
Yeah, so there'll be another, no, not in the gap, but in the area between the gaps.
We're gonna call them fast slots. So there'll be like a FS and an arrow. Okay, is there a motion to approve modifying the speed humps at a cost of $16,717.18?
So move.
Is there a second? Yeah, second by Councilman Clare. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, speed humps are approved.
Thank
Next is property exchange for with Page Brock Holdings. This is a property exchange to allow the truing up of all the property lines around the current business district in the downtown area on Old Litchfield Road. Is there a short presentation from Woody?
Yes, Mayor, this is the final action that the city council will take. This is approving ordinance 20-245, which approves the exchange of the property. If you approve that tonight, we will then work with the property owner to enter into an agreement that lays out the terms of how the property exchange will occur, which will eventually lead to a close of escrow and recording deeds.
Are there any questions from council concerning this exchange? If not, is there a motion to approve the ordinance 20-245 to authorize the exchange of real property as it has been presented to council in the past?
So
Councilman
moved.
Leonard Watson is moved, seconded by Councilman Rostosi. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the exchange is approved.
Thank you.
Now we have we have the consideration of approving a utility water easement for Liberty Utilities. And this is also from Woody.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. This is a follow-up to your approval of the ordinance that you just adopted. Before we turn over a portion of the right-of-way or the property along Honeysuckle Street, we need to dedicate or grant to Liberty Utilities an easement for several water meters that they have located along that strip of land, because it's about to change from public ownership, from city ownership to private ownership. And we want to make sure Liberty Utility has an easement for those water meters and can access those water meters before the property, before the property exchange occurs.
Okay, are there any questions concerning this from council? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve granting a water utility easement to Liberty Utilities across a parcel of land located south side of Honeysuckle?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Clare. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we've granted the water easement. That brings us to the end of our normal agenda. We do have a need for an executive session. Specifically, this is to receive advice from the city council, city council. It's been a long meeting. The city attorney under 8B for a development agreement that's being negotiated with Sun Hill. Is there a motion to go into the executive session? Moved by Councilman Brainerd Watson. Is there a second? Seconded by the Vice Mayor Paul Faith. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going into executive session.
Mayor, if
mean-
you'll give me just a second so I can move everybody out to the waiting room.
Yes, you can take a minute or two. I'm going to go get a new glass of water. So anybody else who needs a short break, we'll take a minute or so to get this organized so that we get the Zoom meeting down to only the people who are in the executive session.
Mayor, do you want Pam and Jason to attend the executive session?
You're going to do the presentation. Do you need them to be there as part of the presentation of the development agreement? Because if not, I would say no.
Just for the, any questions there might be on the conceptual development plan? The planning part. I actually don't think so, but
Yeah, I don't think it will be necessary. I don't think those will be the questions. I don't think will be about things like that. And between you and I, we should be able to handle them.
Okay.
At least at this